In his past life, he was tricked to death by a scumbag and a poisonous girl. After his rebirth, Xia Liang tore it open and never spoke. She swore to devote her whole life to studying, earning money, and pursuing a career, but accidentally, the strong soldier brother pinned her to a crooked neck tree in the village and said, "Little brother. Am I young?" Xia Liang said, "You're not at a disadvantage, we're not familiar." The soldier brother gritted his teeth to himself and said, "I'm pregnant with my baby in my belly, and I'm not familiar with negative distance. When the cold and ruthless big wolf dog in front of me turned into a cuddling and begging little milk dog when he returned home, Xia Liang supported the small belt and fled back to school with his 3 cubs. But 2 days later, Xia Liang, who vomited dimly, was dumbfounded. The cub had not even weaned yet she was pregnant again. She's only a freshman, so she has a second child now. No System+No Space+No Gold Fingers+Double Cleanliness+Sweet Pets+Baby Care. Chapter 1. Mom, my dad wants to kill me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mom. Mom. Come and save me. My dad and aunt are going to have my kidneys cut off. Xia Liang received her daughter's phone call, and before she could speak, she heard her daughter's frightened cries. "Rain. Where are you?" Xia Liang thought his daughter was joking with him. She had been married to Zhou Hao for 30 years and their relationship was perfect. How could he possibly harm his biological daughter? "Mom, shoo." As soon as her daughter's voice fell, Xia Liang heard a familiar voice coming from the receiver. "Why hasn't Dr. Wang recovered yet? This dead girl will wake up soon." It's Xia Jing, her twin sister. Her brother Law died 10 years ago and she has been living in her villa ever since. I didn't wake up so quickly. Jinger, don't worry, the matching was very successful, and Dr. Wang's medical skills are not a problem. Little butterfly will be fine. The man's voice on the phone was as gentle as ever, but what he said made Xia cool like falling into an ice cave. My daughter didn't joke with her. Is Zhou Hao really going to cut off his daughter's kidney for little butterfly? Why? What is the relationship between Xiaodai and him? Xia Liang was anxious in her heart, but the phone over there hung up, and she didn't know if she accidentally bumped into it or was discovered by someone. Where is the daughter? How could Zhou Hao be like this? Xia Liang tried hard to think about what she had just heard, Dr. Wang. 3 hours later, Xia Liang knocked open the door and her eyes turned red. The room was covered in blood red, and Yuan lay on a simple small bed, with blood flowing all over the ground. On the other bed side by side, a calm little butterfly was sleeping peacefully with a ventilator on her face. Zhou Yu. Xia Liang pounced and looked at her daughter's still sewn belly, her eyes bloodshot. She trembled and reached out to her daughter's nose, feeling deflated. No, it's impossible. Her Rain is only 13 years old. Xia Liang persisted in pressing her daughter's neck, her eyes turning black and she almost fainted. She gritted her teeth hard, her crimson eyes staring fiercely at Zhou Hao and Xia Jing. Why? I didn't tell you before, I have already posted a message on the internet and there will be results soon. Why don't you wait? She's only 13 years old. 13 years old. Previously, Xia Liang also watched videos of online kidney teasing, but those who did those crazy things were all human traffickers and scammers. How could a biological father and aunt be so cruel? Sister, Xiaodai is only 18 years old. She can't wait anymore, she's going to die. Xia Jinghong's eyes were fixed, her hand covering her chest, and she said with a look of grievance. She called you auntie. We have a blood relationship, and you wouldn't just watch her die and ignore her, would you? What about my Rain? She's only 13. She's also related to you by blood. How could you kill her with such cruelty? Xia Liang, my good sister, this is what you owe me in Xiaodai. Xia Jing suddenly cried without any grievances, but instead showed a mocking smile. My good sister, do you think you have a successful career and a happy family? But you work so hard to earn money outside. What are Hauge and I doing at home? When you were so busy that you couldn't even eat, Hauge and I went through a lot of ups and downs at home, loving each other endlessly. When you almost died from stomach bleeding while drinking with those old men for the sake of the company's performance, Hauge and I were spending the money you earned gracefully. We lived in a villa, sofa, kitchen, bathroom, dining table, coffee table, and even on the big bed where the two of you have been sleeping since getting married. How many times did Hauge ask me? Xiao Dai is also Hauge's child. For so many years, because of you, she can't even recognize her own biological father. This is what you owe me. Boom. Xia Liang only felt a surge of anger rushing towards her forehead. Her biological sister, who she had taken in kindly, actually had an affair with her man under her nose, in a room, or even on their bed. You. Zhou Hao, tell me, what she said is not true. She deliberately angered me, right? Xia Liang couldn't believe it. She took a step forward and tightly grabbed Zhou Hao's shoulder with both hands, shaking vigorously, with veins bulging from her arms. Hee, my good sister, do you still remember how you got rich? Zhou Hao turned his head and dared not look into the woman's blood-red eyes. Xia Liang only felt his heart cold as ice, and it was throbbing. Like a sharp dagger piercing her heart, stirring repeatedly, the pain almost made her gasp for breath. She quickly flipped through the bag and frantically dug out the medicine bottle from inside. She was just too angry, her eyes turned black in waves, and her hands trembled so much that she couldn't even hold the medicine bottle steady. With a loud bang, the medicine bottle fell to the ground. She gritted her teeth and bent down to pick it up, but a small hand with delicate white iris nails snatched it first. Do you want it? Xia Jing shook the medicine bottle in her hand before Xia Liang's eyes. Xia Liang wanted to snatch it, but Xia Jing quickly walked to the bathroom, opened the lid, and threw the pills inside into the toilet. Xia Liang wanted to run over and snatch it back, only to hear a clatter, which was the sound of a flush toilet. You. She pressed hard on her chest, and the suffocating pain almost made her gasp for breath. Hee, my good sister, do you still remember how your family's life has improved? Looking at Xia Jing's confident and fearless demeanor, she was surprised to realize that she was unlucky today. However, upon hearing these words, her heart still trembled for a moment. She understood that Xia Jing's next words were definitely not good, but after being married for 30 years, what else did Zhou Hao keep from herself? Do you still remember Zhou Yutian? Zhou Yutian. In their home, that is a taboo. Xia Liang suddenly didn't want to listen anymore, and she vaguely guessed something in her heart. Xia Jing won't bring it up for no reason. Unless Zhou Yutian's death is related to the two of them. Sure enough, Xia Jing proudly took Zhou Hao's hand and boasted. That child is really smart. His grades are so good, and the teachers say that even the top scorer in the college entrance examination can make a splash. If it weren't for that car accident. Xia Liang's heart was shattered. Is the car accident not an accident? Sister, why do you think you are so lucky? To give birth to a son is a rare panda blood, and you have successfully matched with a human. The heart has changed 1,000,000 yuan, and brother Hao and you started with that 1,000,000 yuan and earned billions of dollars. Sister, haven't you enjoyed it too much these years? Tut tut, you are living a rich life with your son's blood mantu. You. Xiao Yangqi was trembling all over, her heart was so painful that she couldn't even feel it. She fell to the ground powerless, and with all her strength, she raised her hand and pointed at Zhou Hao, her husband who had been with her for 30 years. Tian'er is really. Zhou Hao's face was cold and hard, his thin lips pursed tightly, and his beautiful stars flashed with a hint of impatience, but he did not speak up to refute. Looking at his expression, What else does Xia Liang not understand? So, my good sister, why don't you go down and reunite with your son and daughter? Xia Liang has a heart disease and cannot be stimulated normally. When Xia Jing throws away her medicine bottle, she will definitely die. Looking at these vicious and arrogant scumbags and girls, her beloved husband and sister of the same father and mother, Xia Liang smiled eerily, her lips bright red and shocking. Then, wait for you. Xia Jing sneered and pursed her lips. Xia Liang was always like this, with a clear understanding of everything and a complete grasp of it. She let go of Zhou Hao's arm, walked proudly to Xia Liang's side, lifted her foot and kicked fiercely at Xia Liang's already motionless body, disdainfully saying, "Humph, idiot. My good sister, I will take care of your billions of dollars and husband for you." As soon as she finished speaking, she heard anxious shouts in her ear. "Ms. Xia Liang, hold on, we'll be there soon and we'll be there in 5 minutes." Xia Jing's face stiffened, and the sound was at this moment, an old-fashioned backup phone slid down and the displayed call number was, Yao Yao 0, with a call time of 44 minutes already. Chapter 2. Little brother, sister is also the first time. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Xia Jing, quickly tell me where the birthmark on that woman's body is. Do you still want to go back to the city? How, I always dream of going back. But this is my sister who has been taking care of me. Xia Liang's mind was dizzy, and she could still hear incessant chatter in her ears. You don't want to go back now. The man's tone suddenly became cold, and the woman hesitated for a moment, as if she had made up her mind. I need to go back. I'll tell you, the birthmark on my sister's thigh is right on the right thigh. Xia Jing. Zhou Hao. Xia Liang, who was originally unconscious, suddenly opened his eyes, and a hot and dry heat spread from his lower abdomen, but he couldn't suppress it no matter how hard he was. The scene before her death was right in front of her, and she wished she could go over and tear up this scumbag right now. Xia Liang took a deep breath and looked at everything around her. The old room was so simple that it had almost no furniture, with window frames pasted with floral paper, and peeling earth yellow walls. This is the educated youth spot, the room is quiet, and most of the educated youth should have gone to work by now. And now is the day she was tied up with Zhou Hao in her past life. She remembers waking up naked with Zhou Hao in the previous life, and when someone from a junior high school came back to pick up something, she accidentally saw it and shouted in terror. Then everyone knew that they shamelessly had an affair during the day. But Zhou Hao was extremely responsible, saying that he couldn't help but drink too much. Her good sister Xia Jing also advised herself, saying that Zhou Hao's family background is good, and that following Zhou Hao is like smoking from their ancestors. But she doesn't want to marry a man she doesn't like so vaguely. At this moment, her good mother came all the way from the city and twisted her ears, scolding her head and face. Seeing that she still didn't agree, he picked up the soles of his shoes and chased her all over the yard. In the end, Zhou Hao came over and helped her get 2 soles. He grabbed his mother and said he would wholeheartedly treat her and marry her. She reluctantly agreed, but later found out that her mother agreed on the condition that she demanded a dowry of 200 yuan from the Zhou family. Not long after, Zhou Hao's family secured a spot to return to the city. Zhou Hao generously gave the spot to Xia Jing and promised her to get 2 more next time, and they would return to the city together. Zhou Hao cared so much about her family that she was foolishly grateful and even more devoted to him. Zhou Hao, my sister is right next door, please don't do it. Well behaved, let me satisfy my craving first. She will have to wait for a while before the medicine takes effect. With her dry and emaciated figure like a dead fish, it turns me off. I still like you to be so gentle and proactive with your front and back curves. Listening to the unpleasant sound next door, Xia Liang's heart was cold. Before her death, she thought they had gotten together after her son had an accident. But I didn't know that they were just what Xia Liang didn't understand was that Zhou Hao had already obtained Xia Jing. Why did he still have to design himself? Listening to the increasingly intense exercise outside, Xia Liang gritted her teeth. Although she doesn't know why she woke up early, she must leave here now and detoxify. Glancing at the window half a person tall not far away, she twisted her thighs hard and regained some consciousness. While her consciousness was still clear, she endured the scorching heat and struggled to climb out of the window. Her body was already weak, and coupled with long-term malnutrition, she found it a bit difficult to climb the window on a regular basis. At this time, she had to put in a lot of effort. Before climbing out, she didn't forget to put a small piece of incense on the windowsill of the next room. Isn't Zhou Hao trying to satisfy his craving? Let's have a good rest then. The courtyard of the educated youth was empty, and no one was around at this moment. She ran out with a cat on her waist, trying not to make any noise, and her body's heat and dryness hit again. What should we do? Xia Liang's mind was spinning rapidly. There was a barefoot doctor in the village, but there was no antidote for this medicine there either. Suddenly, Xia Liang heard the sound of footsteps groping behind her, and her heart became anxious. She flashed into the open door. She didn't forget to close the door, her scorching body leaning against the slightly cooler door, and large beads of sweat emerged, making her body's heat even more unbearable. Who? A cold voice came from the far side room. Xia Liang, whose body trembled. Man. Still a cold man. The heat and dryness in her body could no longer be suppressed. At this point, her brain could no longer think too much. The medicine she was receiving now was obtained by Zhou Hao's mother from the city, and there was no cure in the countryside, except for men. 3 or 2 steps into the room, I saw a young man lying on the adobe bed, his eyes covered with white cloth, one leg in plaster, 2 hands wrapped like a zongzi. Who are you? As soon as Xia Liang entered, the man's thin lips moved and he sternly asked. But where is Xia Liang in the mood to answer now? She is now hot and dry all over, and her breath is about to catch fire. Her eyes are red as she gazes at the antidote in front of her. Just this antidote looks a bit miserable. But it doesn't matter, it's not men who suffer from this kind of thing. Xia Liang gritted her teeth and rushed forward. Considering the tragic situation of the antidote, try to avoid the injured legs and feet of the man when pouncing. You, get up. The man wanted to dodge and scolded fiercely, but unfortunately he couldn't see his eyes, his legs were in plaster, and even his usual right hand was too tight to exert his strength. Well behaved, little brother, I've taken some Chinese medicine, it's cheaper for you. Xia Liang breathed a sigh into the man's face. Although the man's eyes were covered and he couldn't see, his handsome nose, thin lips, and knife-cut chin looked pretty good. You. Don't mess around. Xia Liang's body was hot, and the breath she exhaled was scorching. The man also felt that Xia Liang was not right and sternly stopped him. When speaking, the man's thin lips open and close, especially the sexy Adam's apple, rolling up and down as he speaks, it is even more seductive. Xia Liang took a deep breath, her nose filled with a strong masculine aura. Instinctively, she lowered her head to block the man's chattering thin lips, took a deep breath, and without forgetting her bad taste, moved down and bit the rolling Adam's apple. The man's body visibly tightened, stiffening, and the annoying voice in her ear also stopped. Xia Liang landed 3 or 2 times and stripped off their pants. You. This is playing hooliganism. Noisy. Xia Liang felt restless in his heart and lowered his head again, rudely blocking his mouth. Although Xia Liang had 2 children in his previous life, it was the first time he had forced a man to do so. Fortunately, this man is a sick patient with little combat power. Otherwise, Xia Liang would have to make more trouble to detoxify. Despite this, Xia Liang had been busy for almost half an hour. She was so tired that her waist and legs were sore, and her whole body was sore. She wished she could find a place to sleep under her head now. But not yet. Is there still a mess waiting for her at Xia? Summer has cooled down and calmed down, but it still feels a bit unreal. Not only did she get reborn, but she also slept with a stranger, and the key was that she made him stronger. Turning to look at the man, hey, after just passing by, all the visible marks on his body were blue and purple, all of which were his own masterpieces. Xia Liang felt even more guilty in her heart. Out of humanitarian spirit, Xia Liang still has a sense of responsibility and wants to help him lift his shorts. You want to do it again? The man seemed to suddenly come to his senses, feeling that Xia Liang was still moving him, wanting to struggle. However, Xia Liang quickly pulled her pants and covered the key parts of the man's body, saying angrily, "What are you afraid of? Sister won't touch you anymore. It's really a bargain for you, the antidote." "Oh, no, little brother. We met by chance and didn't know each other. You just thought about it as a beautiful dream. Don't worry, this is also my first time. I guarantee my health is clean and I don't need you to be responsible. Be good, just close your eyes and take a nap." Chapter 3. Xia Liang is breaking shoes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Looking at the man's small and angry expression of wanting to kill but unable to do anything, Xia Liang's mood inexplicably improved. "My mood is good and my body is recovering quickly." She had just been busy all day and was still feeling uncomfortable, weak all over, but now the feeling of powerlessness on her body has disappeared. She didn't feel any discomfort in her body, and even felt like she was full of energy at this moment. Is this the problem with the medicine brought by that scumbag Zhou Hao, nourishing yang and nourishing yin? Well, this man is so badly injured that it doesn't seem easy to provoke at first glance. She still has 30.6 strategies, let's go ahead. Xia Liang put on her pants and was about to leave the Kong, but her wrist was tightly gripped by a big hand. "Run after using it." The man's voice was cold and deep, with a chilling anger in his tone. Xia Liang lowered her head, only to see that the gauze wrapped in one of the man's hands had fallen off at some point. Several huge scars have not yet healed, and some areas even bleed at this time. Anyway, the strength of the man's left hand was not small. Xia Liang struggled a few times but still couldn't break free. "You. Little brother, didn't you have a good time just now?" Xia Liang looked at the man's head, her eyes bulging as she looked into the room, wondering if she wanted to find something to knock the man unconscious. "You're playing hooliganism. Please, little brother. I told you before we started, I got that kind of medicine and I need a man to help me detoxify it. I didn't let you put in any effort just now, and you didn't suffer any losses. I don't want you to take responsibility. Just pretend that nothing happened, okay?" Looking at the man's blindfolded eyes, Xia Liang still gave up the idea of knocking him unconscious. She reached out to break it off, but tried several times but failed. That should be discovered by someone soon. Xia Liang was eager to escape, and her hand slapped the man's head hard. As the man reached out to resist, she quickly attacked the man's lower abdomen. The man felt pain and the force on his hand relaxed. At this moment, Xia Liang's hand, which was being held, quickly withdrew and ran off the Kong, putting on his shoes. "Little brother, being forced is not a good thing. You won't tell anyone, will you?" The man listened to the woman's last words and turned his head towards the direction where the sound disappeared. "Little brother." The man let out a cold snort. "Woman, great, you have enough courage. You better pray that I won't catch you," otherwise the man clenched his fist and smashed it fiercely onto the Kong. The wound, which was already bleeding, was now bleeding profusely, but the man was completely unaware. In the courtyard of the educated youth next to the village head's house, two young girls walked briskly in. "Li Shui, what's wrong with Xia Liang and Xia Jing? They're both feeling unwell today, aren't they?" Zhou Hongmei is one of the educated youth who looks pretty good, with a shiny black braid all the way to her buttocks. Curiously blinking her big eyes, she naively asks. I heard from Jingjing that Xia Liang likes Zhou Hao. Can you tell? Why don't you see that? Xia Liang refuses to eat every time he has something delicious, so let him give it to Zhou Hao quietly. The girl with her wears 2 fried dough twists braids that just cross her shoulder, and she curls her mouth in disgust. Pooh, don't even think about what she looks like. Can Zhou Hao like her bean sprout-like figure? Li Shui spat out her saliva with resentment and said disdainfully. Xia Liang's figure is extremely thin and small. She usually doesn't like to talk and eats very little. At this time, everyone was short of food and clothing, and they couldn't eat enough. However, Xia Liang had to give Xia Jing and Zhou Hao some food each time they were given. Having been unable to eat enough for a long time, Xia Liang, who is already 18 years old, looks only 14 or 15 years old. Her figure is withered, and she doesn't like to talk, so there is not a single person among the educated youth who has a good relationship with her. On the contrary, Xia Jing has a cute mouth and everyone likes her. The two of them walked into the room and suddenly heard a voice that made people blush and heartbeat. The 2 young girls stiffened, and Zhou Hongmei instantly realized. It's Xia Liang. By the way, Zhou Hao is not here today either. Aren't they taking advantage of the big guy's work to break shoes at home? Really? Li Shui, who had always liked to bully Xia Liang, exaggeratedly widened her eyes. Before Zhou Hongmei could react, she turned around and ran out. Running without forgetting, shouting. Xia Liang broke her shoes. During the broad daylight, Xia Liang lingers in the room and indulges in intimate relationships with others. Her voice was already quite loud, and now she has put in all her strength, afraid that everyone won't hear her. At this moment, the sky was approaching noon, and the people working in the fields were gradually finishing their work. Hearing this shout, the villagers who had been walking slowly back immediately became full of vitality, and the effect was better than taking a stimulant. In the late 1970s, there were not many entertainment activities in rural areas, and the villagers were most fond of talking about the small gossip in the village. A female educated youth who indulges in promiscuity during the day is a big deal, big gossip. Who wouldn't want to rush over and take a look? Soon, the courtyard of the educated youth was filled with people. There are too many people, and it's impossible to stand in the yard. The rest are waiting outside, stretching their necks and listening with their ears perked up. In just a few minutes, so many people arrived, which is much more proactive than the usual village meetings. The village chief of Yanglu village also rushed over upon hearing the news. Step aside, what's going on here? Village chief Yang Aigua hunched his waist, wearing a pair of cloth shoes that had long been out of color, holding a dry tobacco bag, and squeezed in with a cold face. Village chief, it's Xia Liang inside, and Zhou Hao is playing with tattered shoes in broad daylight. Li Shui deliberately increased her volume, afraid that everyone might not know that the person inside was Xia Liang. The village chief frowned. At this moment, with so many people outside, the noise was not small, but the room was still humming and groaning. He, as a big man, was unable to enter this kind of thing and could only turn his head to sweep towards the onlookers, only to see his wife also joining in the fun. Xiujuan, take a few aunties in and take a look. This kind of thing is not suitable for a man to enter, and it is inconvenient for a young girl to have a thin skin without marriage. All right. Li Xiujuan, who had always enjoyed the excitement, immediately rubbed her hands when she heard that she was being asked to go in and catch the traitors. She pulled on 2 women who were close to her. Let's go in and take a look. The door was closed, and the shameless voice was still intermittent. Li Xiujuan sneered. You're really shameless. You roll so sticky in broad daylight. Isn't that right? But Zhou Hao looks weak this week, and I didn't expect the bed to be quite durable. Aunt Sue grumbled, these people have been here for almost 10 minutes, and there are actually no signs of it ending inside. Just shut up. If your fifth son hears, the soul board will beat you to death. Lingqiao snorted and Aunt Sue chuckled, I'll just talk casually, how can he hear me? Their voices were not loud, and people outside couldn't hear them at all. A few people walked to the door and slapped it. Zhou Hao, Xia Liang, open the door. If I don't open the door again, I'll be knocking on it. Upon hearing the shout, the two people in the room finally came to their senses. Zhou Hao's eyes were still a bit confused, while Xia Jing was startled. She wasn't just now, she actually forgot about the main matter. Listening to the shouting outside, we can still hear the voices of discussion in the yard. Although she couldn't hear exactly what they were saying, Xia Jing knew that if someone found out she was with Zhou Hao, it would be troublesome. Zhou Hao never even thought about marrying her. This man has a problem with his eyes and keeps asking about her sister's news, even though he looks stronger than Xia Liang no matter where he looks. Even if Zhou Hao had no choice but to marry her, today's incident is still a stain on her life. She doesn't want to be caught. Zhou Hao was hastily getting dressed, while the shouting outside continued. Xia Liang, Zhou Hao, open the door quickly. How about we hit the door instead? Xia Jing's eyes rolled, Xia Liang. People outside think Xia Liang is having an affair here, so why don't she go out? Anyway, Xia Liang is right next door. She gave her medicine and couldn't wake up for a while. Thinking of this, Xia Jing simply pulled the blanket over her head and muttered in a muffled voice. They all thought it was my sister, Zhou Hao, you can take care of it. Chapter 4. Angry Fan Scumbag. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Zhou Hao's hand stiffened as he lifted his pants, and his eyes rolled around a few times. He quickly spoke up, don't bump, come right away. His lust had not completely subsided, and his voice was slightly hoarse. Coupled with too much noise outside, the sound of knocking on the door continued. Stop it. Zhou Hao tied his belt while dragging his shoes towards the door. At this moment, the door was knocked open with a bang. Ah! A mournful scream startled several women outside the door. Looking at the door panel that had not yet fallen, Lingqiao carefully moved it open and saw Zhou Hao, whose face was covered in nosebleeds from being beaten. The people outside are really unlucky. Where's the coolness in summer? A few people at the door had not yet spoken when a figure rushed in first. She ran to the edge of the Kong in 3 or 2 steps, grabbed the blanket, and wanted to open it. At this moment, Zhou Hao realized and raised his hand to wipe his nosebleed. He quickly turned around and grabbed Li Shui. Li Shui, what are you doing? Zhou Hao, you're really starving and not picky about food. Even if it's like Xia Liang, you can still eat. Li Shui said, deliberately straightening her chest, and the 2 fully developed buns almost pushed against Zhou Hao's body. I like coolness, we truly love each other. Zhou Hao moved forward for a moment, their bodies almost touching each other. His eyes fixed on Li Shui, like a deep spring in a river, lingering and affectionate. Li Shui gritted her silver teeth and said, if you like it, you can act recklessly in broad daylight. Zhou Hao, you're playing hooliganism, playing with broken shoes. I will take responsibility. Cool, I will marry her. Being caught, Zhou Hao didn't panic. At this time, although the relationship between men and women was very strict, unfortunately it was discovered by someone. As long as both parties were willing to get married, they would be criticized and ridiculed by the villagers for a few days at most, but no one would pursue them excessively. Upon hearing these words, Li Shui's eyes turned red. Her hands tightly grasped the blanket and angrily cursed loudly. Responsible. Zhou Hao, you're really. Xia Liang, I can't tell you're so shameless. You can seduce men in broad daylight. You're such a rundown shoe. How many men are Zhou Hao like you? You used to seduce people a lot, right? What's wrong with you? You're so shameless. It's okay to wait until it's dark for you. You just roll around with men in broad daylight, and you're so short of men. Li Shui shouted angrily, and the people in the yard were in high spirits, with even louder gossip. Xia Liang's educated youth usually looks quite honest. This is what the older generation said about knowing people's faces but not their hearts. Do you think she still seduces others in her daily life? I can't say for sure. By the way, let's take good care of our own men and not get hooked by that little rascal. Hiss, no wonder I feel that Xia Liang Jiqing's gaze at me is not right. She can't be greedy for my body, can she? Lu Jizi, an old bachelor in his 40s, said with a mischievous smile, smacking his mouth. His words met with a wave of disdain from the crowd, and the quick-talking older sister sneered. Even if I don't pee or shine, would a woman like you be interested? Humph, what's wrong with me? Although I'm old, I'm still a boy. At this moment, in the room, Zhou Hao also heard the discussion outside, and Jun's face turned black. He clenched Li Shui's hand and increased the force, causing Li Shui's eyes to turn red in pain. Li Shui, please shut up. Liang is not someone like this. Humph, isn't she? She can seduce you in broad daylight, how come you know she won't seduce others? Li Shui stubbornly lifted her head and looked at Zhou Hao with a look of grievance. At this moment, in an inconspicuous corner outside the courtyard, a petite figure squeezed over and asked as she walked. What's wrong? Is something wrong with this? The aunt, who had originally stretched her neck to read gossip, heard that someone still didn't know what had happened and enthusiastically explained. Hi, don't you know yet? It was Xia Liang and Zhou Hao who broke their shoes at the Educated Youth Center during the day. Isn't this blocked on the Kong? TSK, I didn't expect Xia Liang Jiqing to look quite honest in his daily life, but secretly. The speaking aunt seemed to feel something was wrong. She turned her head and met a pair of peach blossom eyes that seemed to smile rather than smile. You are Xia Liang. Auntie widened her eyes in fear, and those who didn't know thought they had seen a ghost in broad daylight. Her sharp voice was piercing even in the midst of the noisy crowd. She had stretched her neck to look at the crowd in the yard, but suddenly turned around and saw the petite girl behind her, her pupils wide open. This is Xia Liang, like a fake exchange of educated youth. Xia Liang. Who is the woman in that room who is wearing tattered shoes? Get out of here. Xia Liang's voice was not high, but the onlookers couldn't help but take a step back. The originally crowded courtyard was forced to open up a wide path for everyone. Xia Liang's face turned cold and heavy, and he strode towards the courtyard. Seeing Xia Liang rushing towards him in a fierce manner, everyone in the courtyard who was watching the excitement also stepped aside. Almost in the blink of an eye, Xia Liang had already arrived at the door of the house. Is this summer cool? I'm going, am I feeling dizzy? How could there be two cool summer educated youth? No, Xia Liang is here. The person who had an affair in the room must not be Xia Liang. Xia Liang ignored the discussions behind her and strode into the familiar door, only to hear the angry voice of scumbag Zhou Hao. Li Shui, please shut up, Liang is not someone like this. I am her first man, and she only likes me. As soon as he finished speaking, Xia Liang rushed over and slapped Zhou Hao's face with two big mouths. Zhou Hao was knocked and stumbled a few times, but it was Li Shui who grabbed him and forced him to stand still. You. Li Shui was about to question, but saw Xia Liang angrily standing one step away from the two of them. Summer cool. What's wrong with you? The questioning was so stuck on her lips that Li Shui didn't even come to her senses. She widened her eyes forcefully, even lifting her hand to wipe the corners of her eyes, staring intently at Xia Liang, who was dressed neatly. She raised one hand and pointed at Xia Liang's nose. Xia Liang, what's wrong with you? She turned her head to look at the ball and the quilt on the Kong, and could see that there was someone there. But isn't that person Xia Liang? Isn't Xia Liang the one who just got involved in breaking shoes with Zhou Hao? Zhou Hao even admitted it. Ah. Xia Liang raised her hand, grabbed Li Shui and pointed to her finger, gently breaking it. With a dull click, her finger snapped. Li Shui screamed in pain, and Xia Liang said in a cold voice. Firstly, I hate people pointing at my nose the most. Secondly, who are you saying, tattered shoes? I. Li Shui withdrew her fingers in pain, shook her hands vigorously, and reluctantly complained. But just now Zhou Hao said. Oh, what did Zhou Hao say? Xia Liang's icy gaze turned towards Zhou Hao. Zhou Hao covered his face, his 2 slaps just now made his eyes turn black, and the corners of his mouth were all broken. Coupled with the unfinished nosebleeds on his face was covered in blood. How could he still be like a handsome young man in his usual life? Chapter 5. Beating someone up is still very enjoyable. You are listening at novelfull.audio. He said the person in the blanket is you. Li Shui spoke with grievances, thinking it was Xia Liang. Liang, how dare you hit me? Zhou Hao looked at Xia Liang with a wounded expression on his face. Those who didn't know thought Xia Liang was a heartless man. The contemplative Xia Liang regained his senses and sneered, you slandered my reputation and wrongly accused me of having sex with you. Shouldn't you fight? Or do you say that during the day, young Master Zhou plays with people and can't even see who they are? Zhou Hao, aren't you salivating at me and deliberately relying on me for playing with other women's broken shoes? I want to see which shameless and despicable scumbag is using my name to break shoes and falsely accuse me. As Xia Liang spoke, she walked over the 2 of them and grabbed the blanket, pulling hard. At this moment, the person inside the blanket was already trembling with fear, tightly gripping both hands. Even when Xia Liang pulled, he didn't even pull it apart. Her good sister is so determined that she wants to hold on to her head with the basin of urine that she shares with others. Xia Liang's eyes turned cold as she saw the chopsticks on the edge of the Kong. She grabbed them and hit the woman in the blanket fiercely. Where did you come from, little shoes? If you're not behaving properly, you'll just get along with people in broad daylight and dare to throw sewage on my head. I'll beat you to death, you shameless thing. You little tattered shoes are hiding under the covers and not coming out, aren't you still naked? Li Auntie, Zhao Auntie, come over quickly and help me get these little tattered shoes out. Xia Liang was talking and beating as the chopsticks in her hand fell rapidly, hitting the quilt with a thud. Even through the quilt, one could imagine the sour and painful sensation. The women by the door also felt angry when they heard the shouting. Rural people are very practical, and they hate people who do shameless things themselves but let others take the blame. Li Auntie picked up the broom by the door, Zhao Auntie took off her shoes, and fiercely hit the ball in the blanket. The woman in the blanket was beaten and screamed loudly, but she didn't let go of her hand holding the blanket, which resulted in several people hitting even harder. It has to be said that Zhou Hao and the woman in the blanket are disgusting enough. At first, everyone looked down on Xia Liang, but now they hate both of them more. If it weren't for Xia Liang's sudden appearance, wouldn't this shit bowl be stuck on Xia Liang's head today? The kind that can't even be washed off. She's not moving anymore. In the chaos, someone shouted out, and Li Xiujuan grabbed the corner of the blanket and tugged hard, finally revealing the woman hidden inside. The woman was almost naked, with only a bright red underpants that reached her knees. The bruises and purple marks on her body showed how intense they had been rolling on the bed just now. At this moment, the woman's hair was scattered and covering her face. The village chief's wife, Li Xiujuan, took a step forward and rudely pulled open the hair on the woman's face. She exclaimed in surprise. At this moment, the woman who had broken shoes finally showed her face. Isn't this Xia Jing? Li Shui exclaimed in surprise, and she stepped forward in disbelief. She grabbed Xia Jing's hair and angrily asked. Xia Jing, how could it be you? Unfortunately, Xia Jing lay motionless and didn't know if she had truly fainted or if she had fainted. Looking at Xia Jing, who was all blue and disheveled, Xia Liang's eyes were slightly crimson, and her hand holding a broomstick was tightly exerting force, with veins on the back of her hand almost popping out. Xia Jing. In her mind, she remembered her youthful son being hit by a car and lying alone in the morgue, drenched in blood, thinking of my daughter's abdomen being dug open, her big eyes covered in blood and unable to close her eyes. Xia Jing, Zhou Hao, you all deserve to die. No, it's better to live than to die. Xia Liang gritted her teeth tightly, their teeth creaking until a sweet smell came from her mouth before she suddenly regained her senses. She didn't know how twisted their hearts were to do such a tragic thing. Especially Zhou Hao, they all say that tiger poison doesn't eat children yet, but he actually killed their 2 children. This man's heart is as cold as iron, he is simply not worthy of being a person. Xia Liang took a deep breath, but fortunately, the heavens showed mercy and gave her a chance to turn gears and start over. She swore that in this life, this scumbag and lowly woman would be bound together to the death, and they would be tortured and tortured each other. Life is better than death. Xia Jing, open your eyes to me. Can you tell me why it's you? Li Shui shook Xia Jing wildly, but the woman on the Kong remained motionless and hadn't woken up yet. Get out of my way, I'll do it. Xia Liang grabbed Li Shui's shoulder with one hand and pulled hard. With a loud bang, the person who was a circle larger than her was thrown out and fell to the ground with a butt. She lifted her thin little hand and slapped Xia Jing's face. That action was neat, and the little hands were like small motors wound up in wind, so lively that everyone could only see the remnants. In her past life, Xia Liang learned kung fu from a teacher to protect herself. She knew how to hit her face the most, and her hands didn't hurt too much. But at that time, the law was relatively sound, and Xia Liang rarely took action, but now. The feeling of beating up a scumbag girl is still very satisfying. However, compared to what Xia Jing did to herself in her previous life, this is far from enough. Ah! After being slapped for more than 20 times, Xia Jing finally woke up. Her face was also beaten red and swollen, like a freshly shed pig's head. Sister. Xia Jing struggled to speak before saying a word, and then pulled at the wound on her mouth. The pain made her red with innocent big eyes like a little rabbit, and tears rolled down her face. She was sobbing with her nose twitching, pitiful and looking at Xia Liang as if she had been greatly wronged. Xia Liang has always loved this sister the most. In the past, as long as she flattened her mouth and shed a few tears, Xia Liang felt extremely heartbroken. But now Xia Liang, the scene of crying blood in her past life is still rolling in her mind. She wishes she had this naughty sister now. How could her heart soften because of her 2 crocodile tears? Sister. I dare not have a sister like you. Xia Jing, I usually don't want to take 2 bites of food and hold you tight. I help you with most of the work in the field, and that's how you tarnish my reputation. Xia Liang asked with tears in her eyes, her hand covering her chest, her body trembling in heartbroken. Xia Jing paused for a moment, her aggrieved expression froze there, neither crying nor not crying. Xia Liang, you little slutty hoof that waves to the bone. You used to stick your eyes to men's bodies at home and couldn't move them away. My mother asked you to go to the countryside and reform yourself, but you never regretted it. In the yard, a plump figure rudely broke through the crowd, holding tattered cloth shoes with several large holes that he had picked up from somewhere, and rushed in shouting and cursing loudly. Chapter 6. Double Label of Mother. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xia Liang, why did I give birth to such a shameless thing as you? I just roll on the bed with men in broad daylight and play with tattered shoes. How could my Xia family have such a scumbag like you? If I had known that, when I first gave birth to you, I should have pressed you into the urinal and drowned you. You shameless scumbag, I'll take a look. Who did you hook up with today? The woman who rushed in was just chubby and strong, with a particularly loud voice. That mouth was like a machine gun, spraying incessantly. It's really hard for her, running wildly and cursing at each other, without even taking a breath of air. The woman rushed in and saw Xia Liang's thin and small body. The broken soul in her hand slapped Xia Liang in the face. Xia Liang's eyes turned cold, and it was the same in her past life. She had just had an accident when her mother ran over and chased her around the yard with the soles of her shoes. She even got hit several times. In the end, it was Zhou Hao who stepped forward and got 2 sols, saying that he would definitely marry her, that stopped Xia's mother. Of course, the dowry secretly demanded a huge sum of 200 yuan. You should know that at this time, the common dowry in rural areas is a few yuan, and urban people earn more money, so 40 or 50 is considered a sky-high price. But Zhou Hao agreed and said with a deep expression, she's worth so much. At that time, Xia Liang was deeply moved. Now, looking at the shoe sole that was about to fall off, Xia Liang's face turned pale with fear. She habitually took a step back, but accidentally grabbed Zhou Hao's arm. Due to inertia, Xia Liang tugged hard, causing Zhou Hao's body to become unstable. He stumbled for a moment, only to hear a loud slap, and his face was hit hard by the soles of his shoes. Xia's mother was notorious for being ruthless towards Xia Liang, and this time she also exerted all her strength. Zhou Hao was beaten black in both eyes and his tall body shook twice. When Xia Mu saw that she had hit the wrong person, not only did she not feel guilty, but her aura became even more arrogant. Xia Liang, you are indeed a little despicable hoof. At this time, there is still a dog man who will beat you. Are you that adulterer? No wonder you have a crush on Xia Liang's ugly appearance. You look disgusting enough. Zhou Hao's eyes turned black in waves, and he calmed down a bit, only to find that Xia Mu's shoe sole greeted him again. You. Stop it. What does he mean to be beaten for Xia Liang? He was clearly, but his words didn't listen to Xia's mother. Zhou Haoshan was chasing her, while Xia Liang watched coldly on the side, her lips tightly pursed, and she remained silent. Xia Liang, is this really your mother? Someone poked Xia Liang's arm, and Xia Liang turned her head to see that it was the village chief's wife who had just opened the door. She bitterly curled her lips and said, that should be right. It's the first time I've seen you scold your daughter like this. You're really. I don't know, you think you're an enemy. Li Xiujuan pursed her lips and looked at Xia Liang with a hint of pity in her eyes. That's not right, even enemies don't curse like that. You're still a child. You're a good yellow flower girl, but she was scolded like this by her own mother. And the onlookers in the yard only then realized. The first time I found out, there really is such a woman in this world. Hee, this isn't the first time I've seen her. I'm cursing my daughter, little cheap hoof. So what is she? Old despicable hooves. Is it just me who wants to ask, how could she think it's Xia Liang Jiqing stealing someone? As soon as these words were spoken, the whole room fell silent. Yeah, the person who just stole was clearly Xia Jing, but why did Xia's mother say it was Xia Liang as soon as she came in? Is that so? Everyone stretched their heads to look at Xia Jing, who was hiding on the Kong, with her big red triangular shorts still at her knees and only covering the key areas with her coat, which was meaningful. Xia's mother was still chasing Zhou Hao for a fight. At first, Zhou Hao was concerned about Xia's identity and didn't fight back. However, when he saw that she was completely unreasonable and had a crazy expression on her face, Zhou Hao seized the opportunity and kicked Xia's mother fiercely in the stomach. Oh! Xia's mother screamed in pain and bent down, tightly gripping the soles of her shoes. You! How dare you hit me? I told you to stop. Zhou Hao touched the fire with his spicy handsome face, and this crazy woman was really ruthless. You shameless person dares to sleep with my daughter in broad daylight. What's wrong with me hitting you? She turned her head to look at Xia Liang, who was calm and indifferent, and angrily cursed. Xia Liang, are you a loser who died? Didn't you see your adulterer beating me? Mom, he's not my adulterer. Looking at Xia's mother with a crazy expression and a calculating expression, Xia Liang's voice was faint and her tone was neither urgent nor slow. Little slutty hoof, what are you saying? Old slutty hoof, I said he's not my adulterer. Didn't you see that my clothes are neat? That shameless slut you're talking about, the little slutty hoof who seduces men in broad daylight and keeps his eyes on them all the time, isn't this still on the con? Xia Liang's lips curled, and no one saw it. The faint light in her eyes was silent inch by inch. She had long known that Xia's mother disliked her and didn't like her, but when she scolded her again, there were still threads of dull pain in her heart. What are you saying? Too surprised, Xia's mother even forgot the catchphrase of calling Xia Liang. The onlookers, not knowing who, kindly reminded. The one who had an affair was not Xia Liang Jiqing, but your other daughter Xia Jing, who is still waiting naked on the con. If you don't believe it, open it up and take a look. Xia's mother finally believed that she had risen from the ground with one bone, and the soles of her tightly clenched shoes fell to the ground with a snap. She ran to the con in 3 or 2 steps, only to see that most of the woman's body was exposed, and the blue and purple marks on it were shocking. You don't have to think about it to know how hard the two of them played during the day. After hesitating for a moment, Xia's mother trembled and reached out to pull the clothes on the woman's head. You. Quiet, your face. The clothes were pulled open, revealing the woman's face with almost indistinct features. But Xia's mother can still recognize that this is the daughter she grew up with. Who hid it? Xia's mother's hands trembled even more, and she looked at Xia Jing with a worried expression on her face. The onlookers were filled with sighs. Hey, is that normal? Yeah, mothers usually see their daughters like this, right? Xia Liang's educated youth is really pitiful. Dad doesn't hurt or mom doesn't love them. This summer mother is really top-notch. She thought it was her eldest daughter's affair and cursed so harshly. She changed her daughter, and the result. Summer's mother also heard the sounds around her. She suddenly turned her head and stared fiercely at Xia Liang with eyes that seemed to be about to kill someone, her chest heaving with anger. You little scumbag. How many times have I instructed you to take good care of your sister? That's how you take care of your sister. I see you're just a lowly person. You must have seduced a man and only pulled your sister over to pick up the bag when he saw someone coming. Xia Liang, why did I give birth to such a thing as you? Are you going to kill our family? Everyone was so surprised that their eyes widened, and their expression towards Xia Mu was like looking at a monster. Is this like something a mother can say? Xia Liang Jiqing is really pitiful. Compassionate gazes fell on Xia Liang one after another. Xia Liang smiled bitterly in her heart, but her face showed a pitiful and weak expression, as if she wanted to cry. Mom, it's all my fault. It's because I didn't take care of my younger sister well. I shouldn't have been feeding my younger sister without eating myself, letting her have an affair with a man, ignoring my younger sister who was in love, and leaving so many marks on her body. This statement always makes people inexplicably want to laugh. Cough cough cough. Outside the door, village chief Yang Aigua suddenly coughed twice and reminded him. You all come out and let that kid get dressed first. Let's also discuss how to solve today's matter. Chapter 7, Brother Yuan, should someone give you this? You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In the late 1970s, bicycles were still a rare item, with only a few in a village and none in poorer villages. Wang Bin rode back on a brand new 28 bar, carrying a canvas bag on his back. Last time he came, the adults and children in the village were curious and stretched their necks to look at him, almost overflowing with envy in their eyes. I don't know why I didn't see anyone on the road today, but instead, there were many people gathered in front of the educated youth courtyard next to the village head's house. Wang Bin was curious in his heart, but he could still distinguish the importance and urgency. Let's first talk to Yuan Gu. Just didn't expect to startle him as soon as he entered the door. If it weren't for his excellent military skills, he would have fallen just now. Brother Yuan, you shouldn't have been given that thing by someone, right? Wang Bin looked incredulously at Ning Ziyuan on the Kong, only to see that the white gauze on his head had already been torn apart and thrown aside, with bright red blood stains that looked shocking. But that's not the point. The point is that Brother Yuan's lips are swollen like that, with torn skin and a bright red mark in the center of his neck. His shirt has been half removed, and besides the dark red mark, there are countless scratches on it. Below he can't see under the blanket. The canvas bag in his hand fell to the ground with a snap, and Wang Bin only then saw Ning Ziyuan's bloody fist. He was so scared that he picked up his bag and rushed to the Kong with a swift step, grabbing Ning Ziyuan's wrist. The expression he had just smiled on immediately disappeared, and his face was unprecedentedly solemn. Brother Yuan, how precious are your hands. How could you? Ning Ziyuan suffered serious injuries during this mission, with blood clots in his brain compressing his visual nerves and making it impossible for his eyes to see. One leg was also fractured, and 2 arms and hands were also injured. At that time, military doctors said that hands and feet were small matters, and it was enough to take care of them, especially the hands. Although they looked serious, they did not harm the bones and would not affect touching the wooden warehouse in the future. His most serious condition is the blood clot in his brain, which is highly likely to result in permanent blindness. I just brought Brother Yuan over today. He just rode his bike to the city, made a phone call to report safety, and bought some wound medicine. It took less than half a day before and after. How did Brother Yuan end up like this? Wang Bin deftly took out iodine, gauze, and wound medicine, moving quickly and skillfully, yet carefully helping him clean the wound. What's wrong with you? The village chief said his home is very safe, isn't it? Is it possible that you were really forced? Before Wang Bin could finish speaking, the man's cold pool-like eyes stared over. Brother Yuan, can your eyes see it? Wang Bin was startled by Ning Ziyuan's glare, and his small heart trembled violently. No. The man spoke coldly, and Wang Bin breathed a sigh of relief. He thought to himself that Yuan Ji's eyes were so scary just now, he almost thought his eyes had healed. Just now. It's okay. The man pursed his lips tightly and remembered the damn woman's words before leaving. Little brother, being forced is not a good thing. You won't tell anyone, will you? Little brother. That damn woman dares to call him little brother. Woman, it's best for you to keep it tight. Next time, I'll let you know whether I'm small or not. But on your face and body. Wang Bin still didn't believe it. Ning Ziyuan looked coldly in Wang Bin's direction and said, mosquito bites. Wang Bin looked at the sky in silence. The mosquitoes in this village are different, they are really quite big. That should be a female mosquito, her appetite is really strong. But now the weather is not hot either, and it's still early to harvest wheat. Are there mosquitoes in the village so early? Xia Liang in the neighboring yard sneezed hard, and she touched her nose, not knowing who was cursing her. Rebirth has offended quite a few people. Xia Jing has already put on her clothes, and everyone in the yard has been driven away by Yang Aigua. I still have to work in the afternoon, and I don't have much time to come back for lunch. Let's take a break, otherwise we won't be energetic in the afternoon. The biggest excitement has already been watched, but many people are still a bit unsatisfied. The crowd dispersed, leaving only a few educated youth in the room, Yang Aigua and his wife, as well as Xia Mu. Knowing that they were going to discuss something, the unrelated educated youth went to the next room. However, Yang Hongmei and her companions listened with their ears perked up, wanting to know how to handle today's situation. I can't believe it was actually done by Xia Jing. Li Shui complained angrily and muttered, "It's really shameless. Didn't she say she doesn't like Zhou Hao?" "Humph, I think she just saw Zhou Hao's good family conditions." "You can say a few words less." Yang Hongmei pulled Li Shui's arm and Li Shui shook it off displeasedly. "She's shameless and won't let anyone talk anymore. She just rolls around with people in broad daylight. Ah, bah, shameless. What a shame for us educated youth." Yang Hongmei's face was coquettish, and she was still holding a red headband in her hand. She didn't know if this headband could still be held for a while. In the other room, young Aigua glared at Li Xiujuan and said, "Aren't you going back yet? He's such a good woman, she loves to gossip. If she were to listen here today, what they said later would be able to spread throughout the entire village, even to the neighboring village. As the head of the family, shouldn't I also be a witness?" Li Xiujuan didn't want to leave. Her eyes were bulging as she looked at Xia Liang, then at Xia Jing and her mother, as well as the gray-faced Zhou Hao educated youth. She also wanted to know how to solve today's situation. "You're not needed here." Young Aigua couldn't believe his mother. Law. Xia Liang looked at Li Xiujuan, who was eager to stay, and smiled casually. "Uncle Yang, let my aunt stay. If we start moving soon, there will be a fight." Right, Liang is right. As the head of the family, I have great strength and will definitely be useful. Young Aigua's lips twitched. "Do we still need to argue about this matter?" Seeing this, he didn't insist, but cleared his throat and prepared to speak up for mediation. "Damn girl, what did you mean just now? Who were you talking about fighting?" Xiamu Machuan, he reached out and wanted to hit Xia Liang. Young Aigua still stopped her and said, "Zhou Hao, what do you think should be done with Xia Jing and the educated youth during the day?" Villagers can curse indiscriminately, but as a village chief, young Aigua still needs to be more careful when speaking. "She seduced me and drugged me. I wouldn't marry Xia Jing." The eyes of several people in the room were all fixed on Zhou Hao. The best solution to being caught is to get married. But surprisingly, Zhou Hao disagreed and even bit Xia Jing back. Xia Jing clearly didn't expect Zhou Hao to say so. She was originally sitting tightly against Xia's mother, and upon hearing this, her big eyes were instantly filled with tears and red. She looked at Zhou Hao with grievances. "Haoga, how could you?" She only spoke halfway before choking up and unable to speak, making everyone feel unbearable. "Zhou Hao, right. What do you mean? My daughter seduced you. Did he strip off your pants and force you, or did she roll the bed with you?" Chapter 8. Sleeping or not marrying is playing hooliganism. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Zhou Hao's words almost made Xia's mother jump up in anger. But what she said was really Xia Liang hangs his head, and her mother's words make her a little guilty. Just now, she seems to have strengthened a wounded person at the village head's house. She is also a seriously injured patient. She ripped off someone else's pants and my face is a bit hot, and I don't know how that patient is doing. When she left, she even hit someone, and the man's hand was also very strong. Maybe, he can't die, right? Xia Liang looked up at the village chief with a guilty heart, but saw that he didn't look at her. She didn't know if he hadn't gone home or if the man had hidden it and didn't tell anyone. Should it be the latter? It's not a good thing for a big man, whether he's an injured person or something, to be forced by someone. Men are all trying to save face, and if something happens like this, they must hold on to it tightly. "I won't marry her," Zhou Hao said, teasing his neck. "Humph, if you don't marry my family, be quiet. It's okay, I'll go out and accuse you of being a hooligan now." Xia's mother has a strong attitude and never gives in. "I'm telling you, stinky kid, if you become stronger, my daughter will be responsible to her. I don't want any more dowry, 200 yuan. If you lose 1 point, I'll sue you. The village chief and his wife initially thought that Zhou Hao was a bit excessive and that sleeping with his daughter and marrying her was the only thing a man should do. However, upon hearing Xia's mother's last words, both of them were shocked and speechless. A hint of darkness flashed in Xia Liang's drooping eyes, and after a dowry of 200 yuan, it was indeed out. In his previous life, Zhou Hao spent a huge sum of 200 yuan to marry him. What about now? For Xia Jing, will he still come out? Impossible. Zhou Hao refused without hesitation. Xia's mother snorted coldly and said, "Then you can wait and eat the loot." Hauga. Xia Jing looked at him pitifully, pleading. Zhou Hao looked at Xia Jing with hatred in his eyes, gritted his teeth, and angrily said, "I won't marry her. She's just a tattered shoe. Before me, I didn't know how many people I slept with. If I marry a woman like this, I won't even know who she belongs to when I have a child." You. Zhou Hao's words completely angered Xia Mu. She raised her hand and wanted to hit someone again, but Zhou Hao stood up straight and loudly said, "Don't believe it, take a look at the Kong. Is there any blood on it?" Xia Liang looked up in shock. She didn't expect Zhou Hao to be so scumbag at this moment. Is that something a man can say just now? However, his words made the eyes of the village chief's wife widen like copper bells. She even ran to the nearby earthen Kong, carefully searching for it, and exclaimed in fear. "There really isn't one. Xia Jing, you haven't really slept with several men, have you?" she said, her eyes lit up with excitement. "Speaking of which, it's okay to marry your daughter, but not Xia Jing. If it were Xia Liang, it wouldn't be a problem to offer a dowry of 200 yuan. Xia Liang. Upon hearing that Xia Liang could exchange her dowry for 200 yuan, Xia's mother's eyes sparkled brightly. "Don't you find it disgusting, Mom, to have a man who has slept with his sister marry me?" With a mocking smile from Xia Liang, Xia Mu's face turned black. Just as she was about to speak, Xia Liang continued. "Besides, if Zhou Hao sleeps down my younger sister but doesn't take responsibility, who will marry her in the future? Will you keep raising her as an old girl? Then you can't even exchange a penny for a dowry. Do you want to keep her for a lifetime in vain? Besides, there are already many rumors and gossip in the village. My younger sister is still not recognized when someone sleeps. Are you trying to make her die?" This successfully silenced Xia's mother, and her dark eyes looked at Zhou Hao again. "You slept with my daughter, will you marry or not?" Zhou Hao turned his head and looked affectionately at Xia Liang, speaking in a low voice. "Cool, the person I like is you. I was framed and I would never marry Xia Jing." Looking at his self-proclaimed deep affection, Xia Liang felt nauseous and almost vomited the next night's meal. "Like me but slept with my sister, I really can't enjoy your deep affection. Mom, why don't we just sue him?" The matter was not resolved in the end. Zhou Hao said to call his family and listen to their opinions on marriage matters. And Xia's mother gave him 3 days, firmly stating that if he didn't give him a dowry of 200 yuan to marry Xia Jing, she would sue him for being a hooligan. Xia Jing cried and said that she only gave Zhou Hao one man, and also said that their first time was in a small forest by the river. Reborn once, Xia Liang would never marry Zhou Hao, a scumbag. In the previous life, they even risked their lives to get together. Now that she's not involved, she wants to see if this scumbag couple can achieve their wish. "I still have to work in the afternoon, and Xia Liang doesn't want to rest anymore. She doesn't get along well with people like educated youth, and their relationship is neither hot nor cold." After a long fuss at noon, the educated youth ordered a cold coarse corn grits pancake for lunch. "I haven't eaten this kind of pancake for many years. It's not delicious and has a sour taste. Eating it can make me feel sore." However, thinking of not having to be tied to scumbags in this lifetime, Xia Liang was still very happy in her heart. Summer is cool. Xia Liang struggled to eat, and Yang Hongmei approached with a pancake in her hand, apologizing. Xia Liang, I'm sorry I didn't figure out what happened today. Yang Hongmei has always been like this, cheating and playing tricks, but able to bend and stretch. Just like the act of catching traitors just now, although she was also present, she was not as quiet as Li Shui, and her usual presence was very low. Sorry for what? By the way, Sister Hongmei, I also wanted to ask you, who told you I was having an affair? If she remembers correctly, the two of them would say she was having an affair as soon as they returned. Xia Liang understands that this matter is definitely related to Xia Jing, but unfortunately she has no evidence. I heard what Li Shui said. She said you were resting today, and Zhou Hao didn't work either. When we came back, we heard something moving in the room. Ha, Xia Liang sneered inwardly. This Yang Hongmei, I don't know what benefit Xia Jing has given her, but at this moment, she doesn't even confess to Xia Jing. I directly put the pot on Li Shui's body. If Li Shui finds out both Yang Hongmei and Li Shui are not good things. Xia Liang turned her head and saw that Li Shui was also looking towards them, with anger in her eyes. Xia Liang struggled to take the last bite of the pancake and stood up, sneering. I thought who was spreading rumors about me. It turned out to be Li Shui. I wanted to ask her, how did Xia Liang offend her? She has no grudges or grievances. She just slandered my reputation. Why is she so malicious? Yang Hongmei's face turned pale when she saw Xia Liang getting up and wanting to argue with Li Shui. She quickly grabbed Xia Liang's arm and whispered, Xia Liang, let's forget it. We are all educated youth, looking down but not looking up. We all live together, and it's not good if we get too stiff. Humph, even if we all live together, she can't slander me. Li Shui, come over here. In the last sentence, Xia Liang increased her volume. Li Shui had already been paying attention to this side. When she heard Xia Liang calling out to her in a huff, she was not afraid either. Anger surged up and she strode over. Xia Liang, what do you want to do? Chapter 9. How dare you slander me? I owe you a beating. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Li Shui is not very tall, and she speaks very impulsively. She has a typical explosive personality and can handle anything. Among the educated youth who come to Yanglu village, Zhou Hao has the best conditions for men. A while ago, Zhou Hao spilled his lips after drinking too much. Li Shui found out that Zhou Hao's family was already helping him with his relationship back to the city, so she had some thoughts on it, occasionally approaching Zhou Hao's side. He always tries to please Zhou Hao while speaking. Unfortunately, she is just average in appearance, with a delicate appearance and poor family conditions. After coming to Yanglu village, her parents have never sent her anything. Although her size is not large, she has a good appetite. She couldn't even eat enough of the portion ordered by the educated youth, so she couldn't save it to please Zhou Hao. But Xia Liang is different. He has fewer snacks and can usually give half to Xia Jing. Xia Jing often acts as a good person to Zhou Hao. Yang Hongmei once jokingly asked, does Xia Jing like Zhou Hao? At that time, Xia Jing complained, saying that it meant Xia Liang. Therefore, Li Shui always thought that Xia Liang was trying to please Zhou Hao. Today, when she heard the two of them rolling on the Kong, she became angry. I just didn't expect that Xia Jing would become even more angry in her heart. Don't expect me to apologize to you. Humph, your whole family is not a good bird. Xia Jing is shameless, and you can't go anywhere. Usually, I almost kneel at Zhou Hao's feet and lick, without looking at what kind of bear I look like. Li Shui pursed her lips and looked disdainful. After licking it for so long, the man who pleased me slept with his sister. Xia Liang, why are you so? Ah! With a loud slap, it slapped fiercely. Li Shui touched her face in disbelief, tears of anger almost falling from her eyes. Xia Liang, you despicable person. How dare you hit me? How dare you still curse? Another crisp slap hit the other side of Li Shue's face, and Xia Liang put in a lot of effort these 2 times. In his past life, Li Shue was also known by everyone in the village, but later he had to marry Zhou Hao, a scumbag. Even if she gets married, getting married and rolling together will be a burden on her for a lifetime. Her mother-in-law has always been using this matter to manipulate her. Li Shue has a hot temper. When has she suffered such a loss? Raise your hand and want to return it, but can Xia Liang let her fight? Raise your hand and grab her wrist. Li Shue became angry and was about to hit with the other hand. However, Xia Liang wouldn't get used to her. She forcefully folded her hand downwards, and Li Shue let out a scream. The educated youth all looked over. Stop fighting. Yang Hongmei didn't expect that Xia Liang would get started without a word. She was closest and quickly approached to pull Xia Liang away. Xia Liang shook her hand and slapped Yang Hongmei in the face, still patting her with the back of her hand. Yang Hongmei covered her face and looked at her incredulously. Xia Liang, you. Oh, what's wrong with you, Miss Hongmei? Why are you coming over when you're free? I'm sorry, I didn't even pay attention just now. Xia Liang apologized insincerely, and Li Shue on the other side hugged her arm in pain and shouted loudly. In the end, the neighboring village chief heard the commotion and rushed over, quickly taking Li Shue to find the village doctor. Uncle Yang, I didn't pay attention just now. Li Shue said that I was just as shameless as Xia Jing. Our whole family seduced men and even hit me. I just raised my hand to stop her. I really didn't mean to, and I didn't expect her to be so delicate. Yang Aigua gave a sharp slap at the corner of his mouth, and your hand was raised too hard. Today's incident, discerning people know who it is targeting. Although Li Shue is not a good bird, it's not good to hurt someone in his village. What's going on here? A few people had just walked to the entrance of the educated youth courtyard when a man in his 20s with a flat head walked out. His sharp gaze swept over everyone and he asked with a smile. Uncle Yang, what's wrong with this? This kid's arm hurts, probably it's broken. When Yang Aigua saw the visitor, his face became more serious and he said, Isn't this about taking her to see and putting her arm on? The man has a well-proportioned appearance, a commanding temperament, and the sharpness in his eyes is hard to conceal when talking or laughing. Xia Liang looked around and saw that although he had a smile on his face, his figure was straight and his face was masculine and upright. He also came out of the village chief's house. At first glance, this person is not an ordinary person, shouldn't he be a soldier? If he were a soldier, 9 out of 10 he would come to take care of the wounded. It's over, Xia Liang's heart is furry. It's not easy to guess the identity of that person, is it? Oh, is your arm broken? Let me see, I'm the best at this type of trauma. Class monitor Wang Bin, isn't this appropriate? There's nothing inappropriate. I think this comrade is in severe pain, so I'll help her take a look first. It's Xia Liang intentionally hurt me. When Li Shue saw the man, her eyes lit up. When she heard that he was still a class monitor, her eyes became even brighter. This person is young and still a soldier. If we can establish a relationship with him, then, I didn't do anything, she just hit me, sob. Brother Wang, that's really troublesome of you. Listening to Li Shue's annoying voice, everyone felt a bit overwhelmed. Wang Bin was even more nauseous, so he endured the discomfort and walked over, lifting Li Shue's injured hand. Yang Hongmei supported Li Shue, and her eyes towards Wang Bin also became a bit hot. Xia Liang is a bit speechless. In fact, in this era, people say they go to the countryside to support rural construction. How many people really want to stay here for a lifetime? If there's a chance, who doesn't want to go back to the city? Your arm. Wang Bin only glanced and furrowed his brow. Brother Wang, is his arm broken? Is he going to be disabled? Xia Liang, why are you so cruel? Woo woo, we have no grudges, you actually destroyed me. Ah! In a terrifying cry of pain, everyone realized that Xia Liang had arrived in front of Li Shui at some point. He held her wrist with one hand and saw her gently pull and push, causing Li Shui to scream in pain. If it weren't for everyone present at the scene, would you think Xia Liang had abused Li Shui? You. Xia Liang, you're too extreme. You dare to hit me in front of so many people. I'm going to sue you, sue. Li Shui raised her finger to Xia Liang as she spoke, tears of grievance streaming down her face. She sobbed and looked at the onlookers, wanting to hear them condemn Xia Liang. Unfortunately, everyone did not respond, and their eyes were all focused on one place. After realizing it, Li Shui suddenly realized that what they were looking at was she lifted it and pointed to Xia Liang's hand. What's wrong with her hand? Li Shui was puzzled at first, and immediately thought of something. She quickly withdrew her hand and shook it hard twice. No pain, the wrist that just hurt my heart just now doesn't hurt at all, but how could this be? She shook again in disbelief, still like that. Hey, Li Shui, educated youth. You just slandered Xia Liang for having an affair at noon. Just now, you said Xia Liang wanted to cripple you. You don't have many people, why are you so cruel? Yang Jiangwo looked at Li Shui with a disappointed expression on his face. The village chief has always been a kind person, and when things don't go wrong, his favorite thing is to get along well. In his words, there are too many chaotic things in the village, and if all of them are taken seriously, it can anger people to death. I didn't, just now. My arm really hurt and couldn't move anymore. It was broken. Li Shui was horrified to find that none of the people present believed her. She looked anxiously at everyone and grabbed Yang Hongmei, who was closest to her. Sister Hongmei, you just saw it. Xia Liang really hit me, she said. Yang Hongmei closed her mouth tightly and looked at Li Shui's powerful claws. She couldn't speak nonsense even when she opened her eyes. She really couldn't accept these words. Brother Wang, you just helped me check. You know my arm was broken just now, right? Li Shui looked eagerly at Wang Bin, hoping that he could help her confirm. Your arm is not broken, it was just slightly dislocated just now. With that shout, Brother Wang almost made Iron Man Wang Bin's goosebumps fall off the ground again. He quickly took a few steps back and kept a good distance from Li Shui and the others. However, this comrade knows medical skills. Could you please come over here? Chapter 10. Xia Liang is a scammer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xia Liang really wants to pretend that she doesn't know. She just ate a melon and watched a play, and doesn't want to be inexplicably falsely accused. How could she still be named? She pretended not to hear. The village chief, however, had a tense expression on his face. Wang. How is he doing? But is there any discomfort in his body? Uncle Yang, it's just a small matter. The wound is a bit bleeding. I think this comrade knows some medical skills. Let her go over and help with it. This is Xia Liang, she is very careful. As soon as the village chief heard that the wound was bleeding, he immediately became anxious. He looked at Xia Liang and said earnestly. Xia Liang, hurry up and take a look, please. Uncle Yang, I'm not a doctor, and I don't understand any medical skills either. Xia Liang shook her head and refused. Nonsense, she can't even avoid that person. How could she take the initiative to approach him? I think Comrade Xia Liang's handling just now was very professional, said Wang Bin, but it was not easy to fool him. Xia Liang. If it's hasty, she shouldn't have taken action. Xia Liang learned this skill from an old man, who later became famous for his Genji orthopedics. She also accidentally saved the old man, so the old man handed her some simple bone grafting methods. Later on, it was said that she had natural talent and wanted to be accepted as a closed-door disciple. However, Xia Liang did not agree. Genji Orthopedics, famous for a major car accident. One of the injured soldiers had a broken thigh bone in 3 pieces, but the outer skin and flesh were still intact. After going to the hospital, the doctor first transfused blood for rescue. Ray revealed that the 2 broken areas were too far apart, and the hospital did not have such a long steel plate. It would take half a week for the surgery to be customized. An old man Yuan went over and touched it, saying it could be straightened. They can fix it without surgery or surgery. In less than a month, the person ran down to the ground. Because of this, Genji Orthopedics became completely famous. She also found out later that the old man was the head of the Genji family. Just now she helped Li Shui pick it up, but it didn't really have much technical expertise, it was just a superficial matter of bone grafting. Xia Liang, hurry over there. The village chief is still urging, and Xia Liang feels 100 unwillingness in her heart, but now she has no reason to refuse. Turning into the courtyard of the village chief's house, the most eye-catching one is the 2 or 8-bar bicycle leaning against the wall. Xia Liang's eyes were fixed on the bicycle with a hot gaze, and Wang Bin also noticed. He smiled and said, "If Xia Jiqing needs it, come and ride over. We are neighbors." Xia Liang didn't expect class leader Wang to be so generous, so she quickly smiled and said, "Class monitor Wang, that's so embarrassing. Xia Jiqing, don't call me class leader Wang, just call me Wang Bin. By the way, can I call you Xia Liang?" During the conversation, the 2 had already entered the room, and Xia Liang saw the man on the Kong again. The gauze on his eyes was no longer there, and he looked over with a deep gaze. Xia Liang's heart pounded, is this man's eyes okay? Cough cough, brother Yuan, don't look at people like that. It's not good to scare our Xia Liang sister. Although the 2 were familiar, every time Ning Ziyuan looked at them like this, Wang Bin still felt guilty. Xia Liang's younger sister. The man raised his sword eyebrows lightly, and his deep eyes looked straight in the direction of Xia Liang. Xia Liang's body was tense, and his eyes were straight in his eyes. These eyes don't seem blind, can't they really be seen? Why is she so suspicious? Watched by him, Xia Liang felt completely naked, with no secrets to speak of. This person is so terrifying, we need to stay away. Xia Liang's body unconsciously leaned back, and the man's eyes turned around as well. Xia Liang was surprised in her heart, but Wang Bin didn't notice and said casually, "Yuan Gu, Xia Liang's younger sister knows how to straighten her bones. I just saw it and it's amazing. I thought I was not far away anyway, so I called her over to help you take a look at your legs. Hey, you're also idle here. Maybe Xia Liang's sister helped you take a look and you can get off the ground immediately." Wang Bin smiled and said, but Xia Liang had a black thread on his head. Looking at the tightly wrapped legs, it seems that there is still plaster, and you don't need to look to know that the injury is not minor. She doesn't even know where the confidence of this squad leader Wang came from, saying she can make people go down immediately. Wang Bin, where do I have that ability? I also know a little bit about it. Pai Mao. I saw it just now, and you immediately attached the dislocated wrist of someone else. Xia Liang, sister, don't be humble. Don't look at Yuan Gu who looks fierce, he's actually quite nice. He's handsome and has high combat power, and we even have a line of people chasing him. Wang Bin, please shut up. Ning Ziyuan can't bear it anymore. Why didn't he pay attention before? Why is Wang Bin so heartbroken? Oh, brother Yuan, I'm just being honest. You don't know, sister Xia Liang's skills are really good. Let her help you check her legs and arms later. Maybe everything will be fine tomorrow. Alright, I'll go out first, Sister Xia Liang. I'll leave this to you. I don't know when. Wang Bin brought a medicine box, stuffed it next to Xia Liang, and then applied oil on the soles of his feet before running away. Before leaving, he even pulled at the village chief and said, "Uncle Yang, don't be fooled, let's go." The village chief's mind is still blank now. What did he do with him? However, he still gave a warning. Then I'll go back first. Remember to let me know if you have anything to say. Xia Liang watched them all leave, speechless. These people have really big hearts. Is it appropriate to have two lonely men and women alone in the same room? Are you a doctor? The room was so quiet, just as Xia Liang didn't know how to speak, the man suddenly spoke. No. I'm just an ordinary educated youth who goes to the countryside. I know some bone grafting skills, but I haven't learned it before and I'm not a professional. Just now, class leader Wang exaggerated that I'm not as skilled as a doctor. Xia Liang was afraid of being recognized by him and deliberately lowered her voice. She should be speaking differently now than not long ago, right? Oh, I made a mistake. If I had known we would have met again, she should have gritted her teeth and didn't say a word. I hope this man doesn't remember himself, otherwise the man's cold and stern gaze just now frightened her, causing her liver to tremble. It was too terrifying. Since you're here, come and help me take a look. I can't let you come for nothing. Ning Ziyuan's voice was cold, and Xia Liang really wanted to say that you don't need to be so accommodating to me. It's nothing if I come for nothing, anyway I live next door to you. But the man's breath is too cold for her to refute. I haven't really learned it, so let me take a look first. The man didn't make a sound, so he should be considered agreeing. Xia Liang hesitated to approach, but heard someone talking in the yard. Uncle Yang, are there really two military commanders inside? It's Li Shui's voice. This guy's hand doesn't hurt anymore, so he's not willing to go back to the educated youth. What are you asking about this? I'll tell you, they're here for business, so you can't go over and disturb them. Speaking of the people inside, the village chief's face became quite solemn. I'm just curious. Li Shui smiled awkwardly, but secretly roused that the village head was too much. When she heard that there was a soldier coming, she asked why. Besides, everyone is neighbors, so it's normal for her to go over and help out, isn't it? Uncle Yang, the summer has cooled down. Yang Hongmei timidly tugged at the village chief's arm and whispered, I didn't know how Xia Liang helped Li Shui heal just now, but we have always known Xia Liang. She has been in our village for over a year. When will she learn medical skills?